Let's take a look at some information and charts on Binance Coin for BraveNewCoin. Binance, obviously a powerhouse in the crypto space, have been for quite some time. You can't be in crypto more than 10 seconds without knowing who they are from an exchange perspective. Their ecosystem is vast, massive empire, touches or used to touch nearly every country in the world. Obviously, Binance US also a big presence in the ecosystem as well. But they've got everything you can imagine related to trading, crypto stuff, currencies all over the world. This list is probably at this point shrinking rather than growing. They're building or buying basically anything, anywhere. DEXs, their own chain, their own IEO platform. The list goes on and on and on. Vibrant DeFi stuff. They're connected with tons of DeFi coins on Binance Smart Chain, on ETH. They have NFT and game stuff. This list is old even. It's from January 2021. This is just to give you a flavor in case you weren't already painfully aware of what's going on. This is specifically the BSC ecosystem. Just a ton of stuff. Most of the stuff many people have never heard of, most likely. But again, just gives you a flavor of the breadth and depth of stuff that's happening on Binance. Really, Binance has been in the news lately, mainly for regulatory warnings or delistings of various products in various countries, Singapore being the latest casualty. Binance has had to remove stuff country by country. Virtually everybody's going after them. Any three-letter or four-letter agency anywhere. This is South Africa even said, "What are you doing here, Binance?" So lots of regulators going after Binance. Brian Burks, the Binance US COO, resigned last month. It's never ending lately with bad news, really. For Binance, they even have traders going after them. Now, these lawsuits happen from time to time, and for the most part, they usually go nowhere. But we'll see. One of these days is going to take effect. In this case, they're claiming a major outage costed traders millions, and outages happen on exchanges from time to time. Usually at the worst times of day, like Bitfinex today, when everything was super volatile. But there really hasn't been too much good news for Binance. CZ, the CEO of Binance Group, has said they're going to aim for a US IPO off the Binance US in the next 3 years, which is an eternity in crypto. Binance may not exist in 3 years. So that's a super interesting timeline that they're giving, or he's giving there. There was some rumblings about a massive raise happening. I don't know if that got sidelined or that was just for Binance and not Binance US. I don't know. Tons of rumor mill stuff with Binance lately, mainly on the regulatory side, but some IPO stuff as well. Binance Coin, to focus it in a little bit, has been burned over the past few years based on their initial white paper and what they wanted to do with BNB coin. It was one of the first coins on an exchange that actually had utility for fee reduction. It also had an added benefit of speculative potential. It was not a stablecoin, as you can see here. Over the years, the BNB price has appreciated dramatically, and they've continued to burn percentages of the supply based on profits. So they burned around 6 million, and this is coins that they've created out of thin air. So, the question in my mind is always, are they really burning anything if they just created it out of thin air? I mean, I guess they could sell it on the open market, but it would probably crash the market. It's just an interesting framing exercise to do with yourself mentally. If you think about hard money and soft money, I guess, or money that is not difficult to create. But in any case, they burned X amount of profits through BNB over the past few years, and Q1 2021 was their biggest burn ever, nearly 600 million there in one quarter, which is just massive. I doubt Q3 is going to be bigger than Q1, probably closer between Q2 2021 and Q4 2020. In any case, they're just burning a ton of BNB, which has definitely helped keep price afloat in recent years. Now, that isn't to say the burn has been the sole reason why the coin has done so very well over the past few years, but it certainly helped. We can take a little deeper look at the BSC side of things, the smart chain side of things. TVL basically peaked in May 2021. A lot of the on-chain numbers for BSC peaked then, have not returned. Google Trend numbers peaked then, have not returned. On-chain transactions peaked then. So a lot of stuff peaked around this time. and has not returned to that level for Binance. So fundamentally, from that perspective, I have a hard time understanding why the coin itself continues to appreciate in value other than just sort of following everything else in the market. All of the regulatory stuff, all of the legal stuff has not affected the price seemingly at all. So pretty interesting from that perspective. I don't know if it's going to be death by a thousand cuts. Eventually something's going to take hold with price, but you'd think with all the negative news lately that it wouldn't be necessarily bullish for the coin itself. So TVL's rising slowly, but definitely not 30 billion levels in May. It's more 15 to 20 currently. And this will wax and wane with prices as well. We can look at the volume stats as well. Those are down from May, according to the bank. Transactions down from May, users down from May. So everything, to me, looks like it's peaked in the near term. Now, if ETH fees go to infinity again, maybe BSC takes hold, but I think Solana and other chains are kind of picking up the slack now. Whereas in May, maybe there wasn't enough in those competitor ecosystems to hold users, grab users. You know, price does very interesting things to certain chains. It certainly did that with BSC, but it's going to do that with Solana as well, where it just attracts all sorts of people like a moth to a flame, which isn't a bad thing. It's just if you're a competitor and your price is not 10xing in a month, you know, your user numbers aren't probably going to look the same as Solana. So if you're bullish, even Binance Coin, I would watch these numbers. BSC, though, one of the main platforms is PancakeSwap. Looks just like anything on ETH. Super easy to use. This stuff is pretty centralized, which is certainly one of the qualms regarding anything Binance. Binance Chain is centralized. The DEXs are centralized. You know, you got to know what you're doing from that perspective. But is it a place where you can go and gamble and make money? Sure. And it looks just like ETH, which is good from a user standpoint. Like I mentioned, Smart BSC transaction counts peaked twice now and are falling again. Active addresses still rising relatively per day. So nothing super bearish there, but to see transactions fall off, certainly not bullish. Fees have kind of flattened out a little bit, but are still relatively expensive so long as ETH USD prices are high. This is total per day, so it looks way higher than it actually is per transaction, but still a ton of fees here relative to ETH, relative to Solana. You know, if you were to rank all these EVM or whatever DEX chains, whatever you want to call them, Solana is currently one of the cheaper ones, certainly. I mean, so is Stellar, but nobody uses it, right? So it kind of is a lot about price of the token. It's a lot about fees, what people can do there, what's available. And people are just going to rotate around based on incentives, which is what you'd expect rational people to do. You know, they're not going to transact on ETH when it's like today I got quoted for a 1 ETH transaction cost on Enzyme. I just like, no, I'm not going to do that. that's just dumb. So I just had to not do what I was going to do. Transaction counts have fallen since May on the network and continue to fall. If you're bullish, you don't want to see these make lower lows. Certainly, average transaction values have fallen over time as well there. NVT continues to rise. Active addresses continue to fall. This is on the token itself, not the chain. I should clarify. So the BNB token active addresses down significantly from highs. NVT rising as well. So to see all the on-chain fundamentals lining up against BNB, it doesn't make sense to me why price has moved with everything else relative to fundamentals, and it's more just moving with everything else, right? Like there isn't a reason that this thing is doing so well from the lows on price. This is the breakdown of the stablecoins. So BNB has a stablecoin BUSD, and it is currently 11% of the major competitors here relative to ETH and USDC. It is number 3, I guess you could say, amongst the group based on supply. So that's also something to watch over time. If the best days of Binance are behind it, you know, you may expect BUSD to start shrinking at some point relative to where it is currently. Or maybe you don't. Maybe you expect it to grow massively if they lose all of their fiat gateways. I don't know, but it's certainly something to watch and think about over the next 3 years, you know, if Binance is still around. Binance Coin, Google Trends, down significantly from highs. Again, all of this stuff is telling me Price just doesn't make sense where it's at. Looks like it's mispriced a little bit based on fundamentals here. So if you're bullish, you want this thing to rise again. You want Binance to become prominent in the news again in a good way and not just these regulatory negative headlines we're seeing over and over and over again. Flipping to technicals, this is the 1 year MA in the green line here and 5 times that in the red, midline in the white. From basically January to July, this thing was cruising in the be careful overheated zone. Pulled back below the midline, did not pull back to the 1 year MA. So it's in a bit of a limbo, weird area where it's not at resistance, it's not at support. If I'm buying this thing, it's probably not until new lows, which is around 250 currently. That's going to move up slowly over time. And if you're holding this, you're probably not selling until 700 or even 1300, right? On the half year MA, the 183 down here, currently it's entering the buy zone and it briefly got into the sell zone. So maybe the 183 is a better metric. I just have a hard time seeing this go to 2200 anytime soon. But maybe I'm just incredibly wrong about the fundamentals relative to price on the exchange versus the coin. So depending on what you want to use, this thing is either, bulls are going to use this because it says it's already in a buy zone, right? I think the more realistic MA multiplier is the 1 year multiplier, even though there really isn't that much data to even look at that. But I would certainly watch this at the midline if this bounces from here, right? Like if this is the bottom, if this bounces to 1200, which is basically a 3x from here, I would get nervous if I was still holding, certainly. Probably a good place to dollar cost average out from the midline to the red line, just because of how this thing is slingshotted over the past year. Not investment advice, just things to consider. Educational information. On the 5200 monthly pivots, VPVR volume and RSI, this thing has been bullish on the 5200 cross since mid-2020. It survived a potential 5200 bear cross. Today it dipped back to the 50, back to the monthly pivot. Everything looks pretty ugly today, but if you're a dip buyer in a bull market, this is one of the places you can buy. Buy the 50, buy the 200. This thing nearly on candles, nearly wicked to the 200 today. 345 is the 200 and it wicked to 357. So that was also obviously a great buy opportunity if this should remain a bull trend, bullish continuation, which on technicals, it looks fine. It's just fundamentals don't make sense to me. On the daily cloud, this thing did wick back to the Kijun, which was my fear for all of these charts where the cloud looked like this. There was a TKC clamp leading up to this point, and then it kind of M double topped. Cloud wasn't bullish yet. So anything above the cloud in the future, in the near term, should be a massive buy opportunity, bullish continuation signal. The fact that this got above the cloud, didn't cross bullish, and in the future will be above the cloud and be bullish on the cloud should be a massive long entry signal. If this drifts below the cloud, then it's game over for the near term, but based on technicals, this thing looks pretty good for bullish continuation. And if you're watching this on the daily singled or the 12-hour doubled, at this point, you're probably waiting for another bullish Kumo breakout, bullish TK cross, because this is going to flip bearish today or tomorrow, and then it'll be back into a neutral territory. On BNB BTC, it had a bit of a falling wedge that tried to break out. 5200 still bullish. Most of the volume support sits here at 004 based on the diamond top in 2019. So this thing is still looking rather overextended on this pair relative to support, even though the trend still looks okay. It's just so choppy up here. To me, there's just better things to trade. Just opportunity cost. Is this thing really going to double or triple before other stuff will? I think, to me, this run in January that it had is mega impressive, and it probably just needs a lot of time to cool off here. If anything, I'd want to see a 5200 bear cross and then another bull cross, in the next 6 to 12 months. I don't know, but I think this thing needs some time to relax, especially if you're in from lows. Let this thing chop around. Either dollar cost average out, that's an option, or just ignore it, right? That's an option, or get your initial capital back and put it somewhere else. This just looks like a mega chop to me. And on the ETH pair, I said maybe in July that it looked like an insane short opportunity based on this head and shoulders, based on the 5200 bear cross. I still think it's a short. I still think against ETH, it looks like it's done as far as the run is concerned. The narrative has certainly shifted away from BSC and back to ETH with EIP 1559. I hope Binance continues to compete against ETH because that'll make both stronger, compete against Solana. That'll just make the whole ecosystem stronger. We need more people to point to centralization issues, more people to point to supply issues, that sort of thing. But based on this pair, based on these technicals, to me, this looks like a short still. It still looks like ETH is the play here over BNB with some supports on the way down. Lastly, I'll just mention the ETH BTC fund and DeFi portfolio I trade for Technique Capital and Enzyme.finance, a non-custodial portfolio management tool where you can send ETH or USDC or just watch what I'm doing. You can see everything, including AUM performance, allocation, all of the Yearn vaults or Conf vaults I'm in, Aave as well as the trades I make in the trades tab down below. That's all here for this one. Like, dislike, comment, share, subscribe, and happy trading.